Welcome to this episode of On My Studio Table. It's a beautiful sunny day. The sun is streaming into my studio window and it's just absolutely gorgeous. As you know, it's springtime here in Tasmania. We're still getting some frosts. We had a frost this morning, but it's turned out to be just lovely outside. Lots of birds. I think in about 1 minute we heard about 7 different bird calls. So even when you don't see them, you do hear them and you can identify some. We can identify quite a lot actually, but there are some that we still don't know. And when you read descriptions of bird calls, they're not actually very helpful. They don't really tell you what they actually sound like. So we need to find a way to record them, I think, so we can better identify what the birds are. I've done quite a lot of eco-printing again in the past week. This is because I had some leftover pieces which I wanted to complete. So I went out and collected more leaves, and I eco-printed some fabrics, which I'll share with you later in the video. But I also did this vest, which is hanging behind me. This is a vest that was originally made by Franka Fredrickson, and I purchased from Kate Fletcher. Kate Fletcher is also a textile artist, and she lives in Hobart, and she has a regular store of vintage and quality upcycled clothing at Salamanca. The Salamanca market in Hobart is very famous, and it's a really, really big one. It takes several city blocks. So if you get a chance to go to it, I would recommend that you do, but maybe go early. Parking can be a bit of an issue. So this vest, I actually soaked it in a leftover alum solution first, which I don't usually do with wool, but I thought it just might be interesting to see what would happen before I discarded it. And this is made from vintage wool blanket. It actually still has its label on it. And Franka also edged it with some, I think it's a black kind of netting. And it has exposed seams also. So the seams are on the outside rather than on the inside, which I think is a really interesting feature. I did it with eucalyptus leaves, banksia and brackenfern in my usual way. And it's got very interesting effects on both the front and the back. So I'll share some photographs so you can see some details of it. So I hope you enjoy this video. I've been working on quite a few different projects as usual. It just means that when I run out of ideas for one thing, I can change to something else while my brain percolates in the background about what to do next. I have done a circle project this time also, which I didn't share last time. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope it inspires you. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to comment if you have the time and an inclination. I'm all up to date with my Circle Project journal with Lisbeth Degn of Dragenkunst. And I'm really loving the project, as I keep saying. The journal was something that wasn't required as part of the project, but I made one because I like the idea of having a kind of a reference book for all the things that we've learned through the weekly challenges. So we're getting closer to the end of the year. Still quite a lot to do, but because it's only one a week, it doesn't take long and it's just very enjoyable. So I'll just open the journal. As you can see, it's getting quite thick. And I've been using handmade paper lately for my circles, even though sometimes the guidelines have said to use cloth, simply because it just seems to suit what I'm doing. Week 34 and 35, I used this dark blue handmade paper, which I purchased in a bundle some time ago. And I also used it in this circle for week 36. And I've only got smallish pieces left. But I did have this beautiful rust coloured one, which was a similar texture to the dark blue and gold one. So I decided to use that for the outer circle. The stitch is a new one to me. I had not heard of it or seen it before. and I think it's going to become a new favourite. I really, really like it, and it's very, very pleasant to do. It's called a coherent triangle stitch, and I used 2 different threads for this. They're both called Eleganza, and I'd never tried this brand before, but I really, really like it. I bought a pack of 4 from the Thread Studio, which is one of my favourite places to source this type of thing. So I used a lovely green for the outside of the inner circle, and then I had a variegated green and teal thread, and the green was the same colour as this. So I really felt that they went well together. And because I wanted the 2 pages to look cohesive, the colours reflect but are not the same as the previous week. So that's what I'm trying to do for each set of pages, and that's something that we're encouraged to do with this project also, if we wish. As usual, I have my vintage dictionary page as a background, which I've machine stitched, also a used tea bag, and then my vintage damask that I've naturally dyed, or possibly tea dyed, I can't remember which, and the stamp text for the week. These have all been adhered with either double-sided tape or a glue stick. I've done some more eco-printing since my last video. In my last video, I gave you a fairly in-depth look at an experiment that I was doing with a new product called Alum lactate. This is a natural form of alum. It's a byproduct of dairy production. So I thought, rather than waste it, I will use it again. I also still had some fabrics soaking, some in an alum solution, some in a vinegar solution, and I also did an iron dip with my homemade iron solution. So these are the results. If you want to know a bit more about what I did, just check the last video. I didn't actually use any tea or tannin in this batch of eco-printing, and you'll see quite a contrast between the ones that had an alum soak and the ones that had an iron dip. So I've done some vintage silk, and it was 2 narrow pieces that I've used. And even though the leaf prints are not clear, I do like the overall colour and the kind of hints at the different leaf shapes. So you might be able to see here that there's some banksia, and then I've got my eucalyptus leaves, and then the dark edge is from where it was in contact with the pot liquid. Here is where I had to fold it, and I think that makes it interesting. And because I'm mainly a textile artist, these are really, really useful for all sorts of things when you're layering cloth and stitch. These were also wrapped around copper pipe, which also made them lighter. But because of the pot liquid, I do have some darker areas. So that would be a hint of iron. Again, I really love the textures and colours on this. And reversible too, so, you know, you can decide which side to use when you use it in a project. So these will be available for sale, but not till after the Makers Market that I'm going to in November. I did another piece of vintage Japanese linen also. So this was pre-soaked in the alum, and then the 2 silk pieces that I showed you were laid inside. And I folded it in half, and so there's the line from where it was exposed to the pot liquid. I really like the string lines, as always. It's quite a long piece, and it's the usual narrower width between selvages, which is typical of vintage Japanese woven fabrics. This also shows lovely leaf shapes and impressions, I guess, of my natural surroundings, which I really, really love. Here, where there was a bit of iron, you can see the banksia print really well, and you can see them here as well. And just the overall effect I really like. So this is the other side. And we also have lovely Banksia prints here and here. And yeah, just the stripe or the line, which is an irregular line. And all of these actually do fire your imagination when you use them in different projects. On this side, you can actually see a clearer impression of the fern print. So this would have been on the outside of the bundle, but it's interesting that you still see a little bit inside the bundle. So it must have actually gone through the fabric. So these are the nice little surprises that you get when you do eco-printing experiments. This is quite obviously the piece that was dipped in an iron solution. So I have an iron mother, which you could say is a bit like when you have a mother for ginger beer or something like that, or even things like apple cider. And that's very strong. That has rusty items soaking in pure white vinegar. I made a mistake last time. I said it was 50-50 vinegar and water. It is pure vinegar. And it doesn't have to be white vinegar. It can be any vinegar. And I've had that for several years, and I keep topping it up when it gets a bit low with more vinegar and more rusty items if it needs it. Then when I need to make iron water for dipping, that would be too strong. So I have a bucket of 50-50 vinegar and water, and then slosh some of the iron mother into it. And it's not an exact science. I just slosh some in and see what happens. So you can see here, there's a beautiful print, or almost like a resist print. I folded it and wrapped it around some rusty cans, and I just love what's happened there. And the rest is more muted. You can see shadows of leaves there, but they're not totally distinct. I will be selling this, but if it doesn't sell, I know I can use it. When I turn it over, you can see a similar thing has happened on the back or the inside of the bundle. You've got the resist print from the eucalyptus leaves, and you have the print from the rusty can. So it's just so interesting what happens. This is again quite a big piece. It is Osnaburg, the cotton version, not the linen version, and it's probably more than 1 metre long and maybe 80 centimetres wide. For all of these, I used eucalyptus, banksia and bracken fern, rusty cans in this bundle and copper pipe in the other bundle, which with the fabrics that were pre-soaked in alum. I did do another piece as well that was rolled up inside this, which also got an iron dip, but I've already used it for the Red for Courage scroll, so you'll see that when I share the update on that. I almost forgot to show you these two pieces of silk. These were also dipped in an iron solution, and as you can see, they are quite a bit darker than the other silk I showed you that was soaked in the alum solution. This was laid inside the piece of Osnaburg, along with the cotton piece that I incorporated into the scroll, which I will show you soon. So we still have the leaf shapes. We have this dark area, which is where the rusty can was, and we have the resist prints from the eucalyptus. And even though this is quite indistinct, I guess you could say, as far as prints go, there's just a lovely depth and texture to it all. Both of these pieces are also reversible, and they're different on each side. So it just depends how close it was to the pot liquid, how close to the rusty can, and so on. And that's the back of the other piece. So really lovely fabrics again, very, very useful, and will be available for sale in November. The other thing I like about this is the accidental mirror image that you get here where the fold was. So you just get this really almost quite geometrical section there. Because last week's video was quite long, I didn't share the cards that I'd made during that week, so I thought I'd share them with you today. I've made them from eco-printed paper that I did a little while ago. It's actually more like a thin card, but it's a really nice thickness, and I have a lot of it, so I use it quite often. I found a natural stick to put on it. It's actually the dried stem of a bracken fern frond. They grow naturally here in our paddocks and on the road verges, and I use the leaves for eco-printing, or the fronds, but I also look for the dry sticks, and they make a great embellishment. So I've called this series Twig. I also did a series of mini journals with these, but they've all sold, so I thought it might be nice to resurrect that. And that was from the lovely Kathryn Young. Kathryn is one of my followers, and she sent me some lovely things in her mail that she sent for the Red for Courage Square. So I've already used some of the eco-printed paper. So thank you so much, Kathryn. She's done some rusting on it as well, which I really love. And there's just enough contrast with the front of the card. Put my business card in it with a little bit of a description. And then I've done an asymmetrical blank insert inside. And because the eco-printing was reversible, it's as interesting inside as it is on the outside. And these again will be for sale at the Swansea Makers Market. I had 2 sheets, 2 kind of long strips that I'd eco-printed, and that made 6 cards. So I'll just go through them. Even though they're all done in the same way, they are actually all different. So that's the beauty of them. No 2 cards are the same, and I really love that. Someone did ask me also, how do I get my papers so flat? Well, they're not perfectly flat. They do have some wrinkles in them, but I do iron them. The other thing about these is that I do hand stitch the inserts in using a bookbinding technique called a pamphlet stitch, and that's a very simple stitch to do. There are lots of YouTube videos about it, and this is based on 3 holes, which I pierced with my awl. I have 3 sizes of awl, so I can get the size hole that I want. And the thread is waxed, and that makes it really easy to use because it kind of sticks to itself and it doesn't slide around when you're trying to sew with it. And we're going to make some more of those. I just need to eco-print some more paper. A couple of videos ago, I showed you some scraps which were left over from fabrics that I'd cut. These are eco-printed wools, and I was going to make like a double signature little book out of it, but I changed my mind. So what I did was I actually had to collage several pieces onto a foundation fabric so that I could attach them all together and then add some embellishments. So I wanted to add some embroidery to not necessarily cover the seams, but just to embellish the different strips of fabric that I used. So you can see here I've got some other wool there, and underneath some wool strips, and there were several of them, so I covered them with these other strips. So it looks like one piece of fabric underneath, and the front and the back are also 2 separate pieces. I actually invisibly basted them on as well as this part, and then did the embroidery. Feather stitch on these 2 strips on the front and the back. Then I used a herringbone stitch here, and I used quite a lot of running stitch as well to make sure everything was sitting down nice and flat. I did have a problem with this. I usually machine stitch the edges with a couple of rounds of zigzag stitch, and then I'll do a straight stitch. But the material was quite soft, and even with the foundation of fabric it did stretch a little bit. So I'll show you what I did to try and overcome that. Inside there is a little pocket, and there you can see the machine stitching. but I decided I would do some blanket stitch around the edge over the top of the machine stitching and a running stitch, just to try and pull it in a little bit. And it still wasn't quite pulled in enough. So then I thought, well, what if I did a crochet edge? Nothing too fancy, just something simple. So all I did was what we call a double crochet, and in the US and Canada you call a single crochet, and then I did a picot, and that was 3 chain and then going back into the first chain with just pulling your yarn through 2 loops. So you're not making a stitch. I think you might call that a single crochet here. I don't know what you would call it in the United States and Canada. I used a really lovely thread. It's the same kind as the one I used, or the 2 that I used in my circle project, but a different colour. And it's got beautiful greens and oranges and burgundy, and I thought that went so well with the eco printing. Finally, it's actually sitting fairly flat. So there's been a lot of work to try and get that to happen, but I actually think the effect is really good. So when you come across problems like that, you might end up with something that actually looks better than what you intended. And I think that might be what happened this time. The other thing that I should mention is I didn't make the book. I actually got this again from the Thread Studio. It is very finely bound with a Coptic binding, and it's khadi paper, which is beautiful for drawing on, for painting, also for writing. So this could make an art journal for collage, it could be a sketchbook, it could be a diary, it could be lots of different things. So it's a versatile thing, and I really love that about it. I've had some time also to work on my woodlands journal, and if you've been following along, you'll have seen that I've done quite a few pages, including the cover. These next 2 pages probably look a little bit different because I've included some other material that I didn't include on the other pages. I had a little catalogue from the Tasmanian Museum, and it had some really appropriate images in the catalogue. So I've reused some of them, including this one of a Tasmanian tiger, or a thylacine to give it its proper name, and some stag beetles, which are in beautiful, beautiful colours in greens and oranges. So I thought, how appropriate are these for my woodlands theme? The Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine, is considered to be extinct. However, there is a bit of a debate about that because there are areas in Tasmania which are so isolated that no one has ever been, and the forest is so dense they're very difficult to access. So there is some hope, I guess you could say, that there are still some thylacines living. One of the things that concerns me is that there is now cloning being done of the thylacine, which is not something that I think is a really good idea. Scientifically, it's probably really, really fascinating and interesting, but ethically and morally, I think there are some issues related to this. And I won't go into it, but you may have your own thoughts about it, but those are my thoughts. But the thylacine was quite a shy animal, so that also would make it hard to spot if it does still exist. I had a picture on the other material that I have been using of some forest, so I thought that was lovely to add there, and then the staghorn beetles. The text I chose is Our Native Woodlands Right Down to the Roots, and there was an image of a stem with roots, so I included that also, and then added all the stitching to represent different plants. Insects are often a really good indicator of the health of the environment. Once the insects start to disappear, you know that the environmental area where this is happening is in trouble. They are an essential part of the food chain for one thing, but also just generally for the health of the area where they live. They are so important. And it is hard to attract funding for insects. We have a friend who is a scientist and a teacher who years ago said, because he was mostly interested in insects and is a specialist in that, it's very hard to get funding for these animals because they're not furry and cuddly like the other animals that attract more funding. I don't know if that's changed. Hopefully it has, because they are so important. The other thing I did was I couched a bit of glittery yarn on it. I just thought that represented a trail. The next page I haven't stitched yet, but I've included 2 of the staghorn beetles again, and a beautiful photo of a river or a coastal area, and this vanishing world was some of the text from the museum catalogue, and this was from the other material, seed resilience, right down to the roots of our native woodlands. So it'd be interesting to see how this turns out once I've added more stitching. I have started here, and we'll see what happens with the rest of it. Both of these are done on eco-printed silk paper, and I've mentioned before that this is art paper that has actual silk fibres in it, and it eco-prints really, really well. I finished the section so far for the September part of the Coverlet of Comfort, and that's also a year-long project. I'm doing this with Kathryn Chambers of K3N Cloth Tales. There is a new video out which I watched this morning, so there'll be more to do to this as we go through the month. It will be mostly embellishing the circles. One of the things that I did, which wasn't included in this particular set of guidelines, I guess you could say, is that I've used the outer cutout sections of the circles as well. I did hint at that last time that I was thinking of doing that, and I decided to go ahead with it. And I really like the effect. It is called Light and Shadow. That's the theme of this section, and I think we've really achieved that with the way that this has been done. It's just got that lovely feeling of light and dark. So the next thing, as I said, will be to embellish the circles, and I've thought of a way to embellish these as well, probably similar to how I've done them when I've done collage work with these shapes. And as I've said before, these are mostly naturally dyed fabrics. The only exception is this green, which is purchased hand-dyed but not naturally dyed fabric, again from the Thread Studio. All the rest are naturally dyed. Either I did them myself or I bought some. So this indigo, which is a natural dye, I bought from the little Japanese Haberdashery. I have lots more left yet, so I'm really pleased I can keep using it in my coverlet. I'm also going to take some photos of how this looks next to the existing coverlet so far, so you can see how it all works together. You just need to imagine that this is going to have a lot more stitching on it by the time it's finished, and then we move on to the next month. It's really amazing how many squares have been coming in to the Red for Courage project. Some more have arrived this week, so I thought I'd share them with you, even though I said I probably wouldn't share them anymore because there's been so many. I just thought you've put so much work into them and thought into them, I couldn't not share them. These 3 are just so beautiful, and they all represent different things. There is a lovely card with it as well, featuring birds. And the themes are courage, tea, and love. So I'm guessing that one's tea and that one's love, and then this one is courage, which isn't hard to guess because it's got it embroidered on there. And I just thought that was so thoughtful. And the explanation is the courage is a threadbare fabric mended with red cotton, and she thought that the ribbon looked a little bit like DNA. The second was a tea bag itself, actually, not just tea dyed, because tea makes everything better in England. Well, not only in England, in Australia too. And the third is the love and care of family and friends. That is such a thoughtful thing. And this was from Judith from the Ribble Valley in Lancashire in England. Moretta from Victoria not only did a lovely square, but she also sent me some beautiful fabrics. Now, Moretta, I'm not sure which way this goes up because I can't see your initials on it. So if you see this, could you please let me know? Because I want to make sure that I put it the right way up. It actually looks great from all angles, which makes it hard for me to decide. If I had a guess, I would think it was this way, but could you please confirm that before I stitch it in? And the fabrics are just lovely. They are batiks, so beautiful colours. They're the colours that I really love. And then we've got some beautiful textures inside that I'm sure I can use. This looks like a hessian or a burlap. This feels like silk, which I'm guessing it is. And then we've got this lovely, it's like a fringe. And these all look as though they're hand dyed. Aren't they beautiful? And that's another bit of burlap or hessian. And then there's another piece of batik. And then another piece of batik. That is so lovely. Thank you very, very much, Moretta. Really, really appreciate this. This really lovely square is from Renata, who is from British Columbia in Canada. And she is a weaver and a spinner and has done a special little hand-woven hexagon on her square. And this looks like a lotus pod, and then some lovely collage and some stitching and a little heart, which is a lovely touch too. Thank you so much, Renata. Just lovely. This Red for Courage square was wrapped in this beautiful tissue paper, so I'll definitely be using that. And some beautiful little scraps as well. This looks like a tapestry piece, and then some cotton with some lace, and a lovely vintage piece of paper, and a card. And here is the greeting card, and I'll just have a look at that. This is from Christina, and Christina is from Spain, and we were a little bit concerned that it hadn't arrived, but it has arrived, and I've let Christina know. And thank you so much. Just so appreciate this. The fabrics have some significance too that Christina sent. The white is from a 1950 given to Christina by her mother-in-law. So I'm really honoured to have a piece of that. Thank you, Christina. The paper piece is from an old calendar. If I can just get to it here. Yes, that's from an old calendar, probably from the 1940s. And yes, so I'm not sure where I'll be using these, but definitely I'll be using them. Thank you so much, Christina. Just beautiful. And I love the way that you've also put courage on your square. Here we have 2 squares and a lovely card with a verse on it with beautiful wishes. And this comes from Linda from Massachusetts in the US. Thank you so much, Linda. They're going to look great on the scroll too. These come from Marlene in Glasgow in the UK, which specifically would be Scotland, of course. Beautiful. And I love the way you've combined the fabrics. And I noticed there is a little bit of tartan there as well. And a beautiful card. I'm guessing that's the military tattoo. I haven't looked at the back of the card, so I'll just have a look. Yep, it is the military tattoo. We actually get that televised here in Australia as well. So, Scottish tartan material from Glasgow, where you live. That's just lovely. Thank you. That makes it very much part of the connection between Scotland and Tasmania by doing this project. Thanks so much, Marlene. This is a lovely package as well, and lots of goodies inside this piece of eco-dyed paper.
So let's have a look. Beautiful card with some stitching on it, and that looks like an eco print on photographic paper, which I've also played with. Then we have a beautiful piece of silk. I'll have fun with that. This is like opening a treasure trove. Thank you so much. And it's all made by you for me, as you put in your little note. That is just lovely. The eco print on the front of the card is onion skin, rust and coffee, and it is photo paper, which I guessed. Then, of course, collaged and stitched. Really lovely. Thank you. And I'm so glad I inspired you to give that a go. Then we have a beautiful letter, and I just so enjoyed reading it. Thank you very, very much. And again, dyed paper, and I did so enjoy reading your letters. It was just so lovely. And this is Monique. Monique also lives in Ontario, Canada, which is where I was born and grew up. And then we have some beautiful fabrics here with crocheted edging. Just absolutely love them. Thank you very, very much. I will definitely use all of this. Thank you. The other thing about this one is that it's got an eco-dyed and rust-printed envelope. So how beautiful is that? Really, really lovely. In the last video, I said that we'd reached 204 squares. During this past week, 14 more have arrived. So that is 218, if my math is correct. Thank you so much for all your contributions. I just appreciate it more than I can say.